Captain Luna Vex stood at the observation deck of the Terran research vessel Nightfall, watching the purple-tinged atmosphere of Kepler 442b swirl beneath them. Her fingers drummed against a reinforced glass, a nervous habit she developed during her 15 years exploring the outer rim worlds. Today felt different, though. Today, she was about to make first contact with a species that had already proven they preferred eating their guests rather than greeting them. "Captain," called out Dr. Marcus Chun from his console, his voice tight with concern. "We're receiving another distress beacon from a colony below. That makes 17 in the past hour." Luna's jaw tightened. The Meridian colony had been established 6 months ago on this seemingly paradise world. Lush forests, breathable atmosphere, abundant water sources. It had seemed perfect until the colonists started disappearing. Not dying, disappearing. The kind where you find blood trails that lead into the dense undergrowth and never come back out. Any response from the planetary government? Luna asked, though she already knew the answer. "Radio silence, as usual," Marcus replied, shaking his head. "The Galactic Council position remains unchanged. Kepler 442b is under protection of indigenous species rights. No military intervention allowed." Luna let out a bitter laugh. Indigenous species rights. Right, because giant carnivorous lizards with a taste for human flesh deserve diplomatic immunity. The bridge fell silent, except for the low hum of the ship's engines. Everyone knew the score. 17 human colonies had been established in this sector over the past decade. 17 colonies had gone dark. The pattern was always the same. Peaceful settlement, mysterious disappearances, radio silence, and then nothing but empty buildings and scattered bones when the cleanup crews finally arrived. Lieutenant Sarah Torres, Luna's second-in-command, approached with a data pad clutched in her hands. "Captain, I've analyzed the attack patterns from the previous colonies. The predators, they're not just hunting randomly. They're testing us, learning our weaknesses, our response times, our defensive capabilities. Testing us." Luna turned from the viewport, her green eyes narrowing. "Elaborate." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she pulled up the holographic display. "Look at these attack sequences. Colony Alpha 7. The predators hit the outer perimeter first, then retreated when the automated defenses activated. Colony Beta 12. They disabled the communication arrays before launching their main assault. Colony Gamma 15. They somehow infiltrated the water supply and poisoned half the population before moving in for the kill. Luna studied the data, her mind racing. These weren't mindless beasts. They were strategists. Intelligent, calculating, and apparently very patient hunters who had been studying human behavior across multiple worlds. "They're farming us," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a cold wave. "Every colony is a test run. They're learning how to hunt humans more efficiently." Dr. Chin looked up from his instruments, his face pale. "Captain, if that's true, then Meridian Colony isn't just another settlement under attack. It's their final exam." The communication system crackled to life, and a panicked voice filled the bridge. "This is Colony Chief Janet Walsh of Meridian Station. We are under siege. Repeat, we are under siege. These things, they're not like anything in our databases. They're coordinated, intelligent, and they seem to know exactly where our weak points are. We've lost the eastern sector, the medical bay, and the primary power grid. If anyone can hear this transmission, please, we need immediate evacuation." Luna closed her eyes, listening to the desperation in the woman's voice. When she opened them again, her expression had hardened into something that would have made her old drill sergeant proud. "Torres, prep the shuttle bay. Chun, I want full tactical scans of the colony's perimeter. Engineering, give me everything you've got on these predators from previous colony reports." "Captain," Sarah said carefully, "the Galactic Council has specifically forbidden military intervention. If we go down there with weapons, it could be considered an act of war against a protected species." Luna's smile was sharp as a blade. "Who said anything about weapons?" The shuttle descent through Kepler 442b's atmosphere was rough, the craft shaking violently as it cut through the dense cloud cover. Luna sat in the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls despite the turbulence. Behind her, Dr. Chen monitored the biological scanners, while Sarah checked their emergency supplies. Picking up massive life signs of the forest surrounding the colony, Chen reported, "These creatures are huge, Captain. The largest ones are registering, at nearly 15 meters in length." "Wonderful," Luna muttered. "Anything else I should know about our welcoming committee?" "They appear to be reptilian, possibly amphibious based on their heat signatures. Highly organized pack behavior. And, Captain, they're moving in formation around the colony. This isn't a random attack. It's a siege." The shuttle broke through the final cloud layer, and Meridian colony came into view. What should have been a bustling settlement of prefabricated buildings and carefully maintained gardens now looked like a war zone. Smoke rose from several structures. The defensive perimeter walls had been breached in multiple locations, and Luna could see massive claw marks gouged into the metal surfaces. "There!" Sarah pointed to a cluster of survivors huddled in the central plaza. "Looks like maybe 30 people left." Luna brought the shuttle down in the middle of the plaza, the engine scattering debris and panicked colonists alike. The moment the rear hatch opened, Colony Chief Walsh came running up, her face streaked with dirt and blood. "Thank God you're here," she gasped. "But where's your security team? Your weapons? These things have been systematically hunting us for 3 days. They've taken over 90% of the colony." Luna stepped out of the shuttle, seemingly unarmed and relaxed. "Don't worry about weapons. Chief Walsh, I brought something better." "Better than weapons?" Walsh looked around frantically as roars echoed from the tree line. What could possibly be better than weapons when facing a pack of intelligent superpredators? Luna's grin was predatory. "Knowledge." A massive shape emerged from the forest edge, followed by another, then another. The Kythera, as the Galactic databases had designated them, were even more impressive in person. 15 meters of scaled muscle and razor-sharp claws, with elongated skulls that housed clearly intelligent eyes. They moved with the fluid grace of apex predators who had never known fear. The lead Kythera, distinguished by the blue-black coloring of its scales, approached the group with what could only be described as curiosity. It tilted its massive head, studying the humans with the same intensity as scientists might show when examining an interesting specimen. "Chief Walsh," Luna said calmly, never taking her eyes off the lead predator, "I need you to gather your people and get them into the shuttle. Do it slowly, no sudden movements." "What about you?" Walsh whispered. "I'm going to have a little chat with our friend here." Luna walked forward, separating herself from the group by about 10 meters. The lead Kythera watched her approach, its head tilting further, as if puzzled by this unexpected behavior. Most humans ran. This one was walking directly toward it. "Hello there, beautiful," Luna said conversationally. "I know you can understand me. Your kind has been studying us for months across 17 different colonies. You've learned our languages, our tactics, our fears. Pretty impressive for a species the Galactic Council thinks is nothing more than dangerous wildlife." The Kythera's eyes narrowed, and it let out a low rumble that might have been amusement. "Oh, you like that, do you?" Luna continued, her voice taking on a mocking tone. "Bet you're pretty proud of yourselves. Outsmarting those stupid humans. Making them run around like scared prey animals while you pick them off one by one. Must make you feel very clever." Behind her, she could hear Chief Walsh frantically organizing the evacuation. Good. They were going to need every second. "But here's the thing," Luna said, stopping just 5 meters from the massive predator. "You made one tiny little mistake in all your careful planning and studying." The Kythera leaned forward, clearly intrigued despite itself. Luna's smile turned savage. "You assumed we were prey." The lead Kythera lunged forward with lightning speed, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of teeth like obsidian daggers. Luna didn't move. She stood perfectly still as the creature's bite clamped down on her left shoulder and arm. The sound of screaming came from behind her, but Luna herself made no noise. She simply looked up into the predator's surprised eyes and whispered, "Gotcha." The Kythera tried to pull back, to retreat with its prize, but something was wrong. Its teeth, designed to slice through metal and bone alike, weren't penetrating. Instead, they were meeting some kind of resistance that shouldn't exist in human flesh. Luna reached up at her free hand and gently patted the side of the creature's massive skull. Dermal weave nanomesh, she explained conversationally. Military grade. Took 3 years of gene therapy to integrate properly with my skin. Hurts like hell when someone tries to bite through it, but it beats being eaten. The Kythera's eyes widened in what could only be described as panic. It tried to release its grip, but Luna's enhanced muscles clamped down on its lower jaw, holding it in place. Now, she said, her voice taking on a sing-song quality. You wanted to take a bite, didn't you? Well, let's see how that works out for you. The nanomesh in Luna's skin began to activate, billions of microscopic machines responding to the damage sensors. What had appeared to be a successful bite was rapidly becoming the predator's worst nightmare. The nanomesh began to expand, growing from Luna's shoulder into the creature's mouth, coating its teeth and spreading across its tongue like liquid metal. The Kythera thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge itself, but the nanomesh continued to spread. Within seconds, it had coated the creature's entire oral cavity and was beginning to work its way down its throat. Neurotoxin delivery system, Luna explained as the massive predator began to convulse, specifically designed to target reptilian nervous systems. I had it custom-made after reading the reports from the first 12 colonies. Amazing what human ingenuity can accomplish when properly motivated. The lead Kythera collapsed, its massive body hitting the ground with a thunderous crash. The other predators, who had been creeping closer during the confrontation, suddenly stopped in their tracks. Luna extracted herself from the dead creature's jaws, flexing her shoulder experimentally. The nanomesh had already begun repairing the superficial damage, and within minutes there would be no trace of the attack. Now then, she said, addressing the remaining Kythera with the same conversational tone she might use to discuss the weather. I believe we need to have a little discussion about territorial rights and hunting ethics. The largest of the remaining predators, a massive female with silver-streaked scales, approached cautiously. Unlike the now-deceased pack leader, this one showed none of the arrogant curiosity that had gotten her companion killed. Her posture was respectful, almost submissive. Luna nodded approvingly. Much better. Now, I know you understand me, so listen carefully. Humans are no longer on the menu. In fact, humans are now the apex predators in this sector. You want to hunt? Fine. Hunt each other. Hunt the native wildlife. Hunt whatever makes you happy. But if I hear about so much as a single human disappearing on any world in this system, I will personally visit every Kythera nest, breeding ground, and hunting territory until your species exists only in museums. The silver-scaled female lowered her massive head in what was unmistakably a gesture of submission. Excellent, Luna said. I'm so glad we could come to an understanding. Behind her, the shuttle engines were spinning up. Chief Walsh and the other survivors were safely aboard, no doubt traumatized but alive. Mission accomplished. As Luna walked back toward the shuttle, she could feel the eyes of dozens of predators watching her from the forest edge. Let them watch. Let them remember. Let them tell their offspring about the day the humans stopped running and started hunting back. She paused at the shuttle's ramp and turned back to address the gathered Kythera one final time. Oh, and just so we're clear, she called out, her voice carrying across the plaza. That little demonstration with the nanomesh and neurotoxin, that was a gentle option. You really don't want to see what happens when humans get creative with revenge. The shuttle lifted off, carrying the survivors to safety and leaving behind a very different dynamic on Kepler 442b. The age of human prey species had ended. The age of human apex predators had begun 0.3 months after the Meridian colony incident. Captain Luna Vex found herself in an entirely different kind of meeting. The Galactic Council's chambers on New Geneva Station buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from a dozen species whispered among themselves, casting occasional glances at the human delegation. Luna sat at the polished obsidian table, wearing her dress uniform and an expression of barely contained amusement. Across from her, Ambassador Thylex of the Kythera delegation kept his reptilian head respectfully lowered, a far cry from the arrogant predators she'd encountered months earlier. The council recognizes Ambassador Thylex, announced High Counselor Zent, a tall, crystalline being whose voice chimed like wind through glass chambers. Thylex rose slowly, his massive frame dwarfing the other delegates. When he spoke, his voice carried the deep rumble of controlled power, but his words were carefully respectful. Honored council members, the Kythera Confederation formally requests a revision to our territorial agreements in the Kepler sector. We acknowledge that our previous hunting practices may have been in violation of interspecies protocols. Luna nearly choked on her water. May have been in violation? She muttered, loud enough for the entire chamber to hear. You ate 17 colonies worth of people. A ripple of uncomfortable shifting passed through the assembled delegates. High Counselor Zenta's crystalline features flickered with what might have been irritation. Captain Vex, please restrict your comments to formal testimony periods. Of course, Counselor. Wouldn't want to interrupt such a civilized discussion about mass cannibalism. Dr. Chun, seated beside Luna as part of the Human Scientific Advisory Team, leaned over and whispered, Captain, perhaps a more diplomatic approach? Luna's grin was sharp. Marcus, when has diplomacy ever stopped a pack of super predators from using humans as chew toys? Sometimes you need to speak in a language everyone understands. Ambassador Thylex continued his statement, carefully avoiding eye contact with Luna. The Kythera people wish to establish new protocols for coexistence with human settlements. We propose a formal treaty that would guarantee the safety of all human colonies within our traditional territories. How generous, Luna said, standing without being recognized. Let me save everyone some time here. The Kythera don't want a treaty. They want a guarantee that I won't show up at their doorstep with more creative solutions to their predator problem. High Counselor Zenta's crystalline form brightened with annoyance. Captain Vex, you're out of order. No, Counselor, I'm out of patience. Luna activated her personal holographic display, filling the chamber with detailed tactical analysis. For the past 3 months, my team has been conducting comprehensive surveys of Kythera territories. Would you like to know what we found? The chamber fell silent. Even Ambassador Thylex looked up with unmistakable concern. We found breeding facilities, training grounds, weapons caches. The Kythera weren't just hunting humans for food, Council. They were preparing for a full-scale invasion of human space. 17 colonies weren't random attacks. They were reconnaissance missions. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once, but Luna's voice cut through the chaos. The Meridian colony wasn't meant to be just another hunting ground. It was supposed to be their final intelligence-gathering operation before launching coordinated strikes against major human settlements. Terra Nova, New Sydney, even Earth itself. Ambassador Thylex's composure finally cracked. These accusations are baseless. Captain Vex has no proof of such claims. Luna's smile turned predatory. Don't I? The holographic display shifted, showing detailed scans of underground facilities throughout Kythera territory. Massive chambers filled with weapons, training areas designed to simulate human settlements, and worst of all, holding pens clearly designed for human prisoners. Proof enough for you, Ambassador? Or should I show them the genetic modification laboratories where you were trying to breed humans like livestock? The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from peaceful species recoiled in horror, while the more militaristic representatives began shouting demands for immediate action. Through it all, Ambassador Thylex sat frozen, his carefully constructed diplomatic facade crumbling. High Counselor Zend called for order, his chiming voice cutting through the noise. This session is suspended pending verification of these claims. No need for suspension, Luna said calmly. I brought verification with me. The chamber's main doors opened, and 3 figures entered under heavy guard. They were Kythera, but different from Ambassador Thylex. These were the scars and bearing of career soldiers, and their eyes held the cold calculation of professional killers. High Counselor, allow me to introduce General Krex, former commander of the Kythera Strategic Operations Division. He has some very interesting things to say about his people's long-term plans for human space. General Krex stepped forward, his massive form causing several delegates to instinctively retreat. When he spoke, his voice carried none of Thylex's diplomatic polish. The ambassador speaks lies, Krex growled. The human settlements were never intended as mere hunting grounds. They were intelligence operations, designed to identify weaknesses in human defensive capabilities. The ultimate goal was a complete subjugation of human space and the establishment of human breeding colonies throughout Kythera territory. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Ambassador Thylex lunged toward Krex, but the guards restrained him before he could reach the general. "You fool!" Thylex snarled. "You've doomed our entire species." "Our species was already doomed," Krex replied coldly. "The moment this human proved we were not the apex predators we believed ourselves to be." All eyes turned back to Luna, who was watching the exchange with evident satisfaction. "General Krex came to us voluntarily 3 weeks ago. Seems there was a bit of civil war brewing in Kythera space. Funny how quickly things change when you're no longer the scariest thing in the galaxy." Dr. Chen looked at Luna with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Captain, what exactly did you do after we left Meridian Colony?" Luna's expression grew distant, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made her words more terrifying. "Well, Marcus, I kept my promise. I visited every major Kythera military installation in the sector. Turns out, when you can walk through supposedly impenetrable defenses and eliminate their leadership with nanoscale precision, it tends to make quite an impression. You assassinated their leaders?" High Counselor Zenta's crystalline form flickered with alarm. "Assassinated is such an ugly word," Luna replied. "I prefer strategic decapitation. Besides, I only kill the ones who refuse to listen to reason. The smart ones, like General Krex here, decided that cooperation was preferable to extinction." Ambassador Thylex had gone completely still, his reptilian features pale with terror. How many what, Ambassador? How many of our people did you kill?" Luna pretended to consider the question. "Let's see. The High Command Council, that was 12. The Strategic Planning Division, another 8. The Special Operations Leadership, 15. Various regional commanders who thought they could continue the old ways, maybe 30 or 40. Oh, and your former Supreme Alpha, Zerath the Destroyer. He was particularly resistant to diplomatic solutions. The chamber was so quiet that the hum of the life support system seemed deafening. Ambassador Thylex looked like he might faint. "Zerath is dead," he whispered. "Very dead. Amazing how quickly nanobots can disassemble someone from the inside out when properly motivated." He had about 30 seconds to contemplate his poor life choices before his nervous system shut down completely. General Krex nodded grimly. "Captain Vex did not simply kill our leaders. She made their deaths public. Every Kythera in the sector watched as beings we considered gods among predators died helpless and afraid. The psychological impact was devastating. And necessary," Luna added. "Your people needed to understand that the old paradigm was over. Humans weren't prey anymore. We were the hunters now." High Counselor Zent finally found his voice. "Captain Vex, while the Council understands the necessity of defending human colonies, your methods raise serious concerns about interspecies relations going forward." Luna's laugh was genuinely amused. "Counselor, with respect, interspecies relations were already pretty strained when the Kythera were planning to turn my entire species into a breakfast buffet. I simply clarified the new hierarchy." She stood and activated her holographic display again, this time showing a map of the entire sector with various species territories marked in different colors. "Here's the situation as it stands today. The Kythera have withdrawn all military forces from human space and have established a 50-light-year buffer zone around all human colonies. They've dismantled their breeding facilities, destroyed their intelligence networks, and submitted complete lists of all their military assets for inspection." The display zoomed in on several worlds, showing the aftermath of Luna's campaign. Former Kythera strongholds now stood empty, their weapon stockpiles destroyed, and their populations relocated. Furthermore, they provided detailed intelligence on 3 other species that were planning similar operations against human settlements: the Vorthanix in the Rigel sector, the Bloodmaw Confederacy near Vega, and the Crimson Scale Empire in the Outer Rim territories. More gasps echoed through the chamber. The delegate from the Vorthanix world started to object, but Luna cut him off with a look. "Don't worry, Ambassador Then. Your people are next on my list. I should have time to visit your homeworld next month, assuming you prefer the diplomatic approach over the alternative. Ambassador Kythera's mandibles clicked in obvious distress. The Vorthanics have no hostile intentions toward human space. Really? Then why do you have detailed invasion plans for the Centauri colonies in your military databases? Plans that include casualty estimates for human civilian populations. Kythera's delegation huddled together in panic whispers. Within moments, their senior representative stood up. The Vorthanics Collective formally requests immediate peace negotiations with the Human Confederation. Excellent, Luna said with satisfaction. I do so love it when diplomacy works. High Counselor Zentha's crystalline form had taken on a distinctly nervous flickering. Captain Vex, the Council appreciates your efforts to protect human interests, but we must discuss the methods you've employed. The systematic elimination of military leadership, the destruction of strategic facilities, the psychological warfare campaigns. These actions could be interpreted as war crimes. Luna's expression grew cold. War crimes, Counselor? Let me tell you about war crimes. War crimes are breeding sentient beings like cattle. War crimes are systematic genocide disguised as territorial expansion. War crimes are planning to invade peaceful colonies and slaughter entire populations for sport. She stepped closer to the Council's platform, her voice rising with controlled anger. You want to talk about my methods? Fine. I killed predators who were planning to exterminate my species. I destroyed facilities designed to torture and breed human beings. I eliminated military leaders who saw my people as nothing more than meat animals. If that makes me a war criminal, then I'll wear that label with pride. The chamber fell silent again. Finally, General Kreck spoke. Honor Council, if I may speak on behalf of the Kythera people, Captain Vex's actions, while brutal, were entirely justified. My species have become corrupted by our own success as predators. We have forgotten that in the galaxy, there is always something higher on the food chain. Captain Vex reminded us of that truth. Ambassador Thylex looked up from his defeated posture. The Kythera Confederation formally surrenders all territorial claims in human space and requests permission to negotiate a non-aggression pact. Granted, Luna said immediately. Terms are simple. No Kythera military vessels in human space. No weapons research targeting human physiology. No intelligence operations against human worlds. Complete transparency on all military activities. And most importantly, immediate notification if any other species approaches you about joint operations against human interests. Agreed, Thylex said without hesitation. Luna looked around the chamber, her gaze settling on each delegation in turn. Now, are there any other species who'd like to discuss their intentions regarding human colonies? I have a very efficient ship, and my calendar is surprisingly open. The silence stretched for long minutes before High Counselor Zen spoke again. The Galactic Council formally recognizes the Human Confederation as a major power in this sector and grants full defensive rights for all human territories. How generous of you, Luna replied dryly. Though I should mention, we already took those rights. This meeting was really just a courtesy to let everyone know the new rules. Dr. Chen leaned over again. Captain, perhaps we should discuss the establishment of formal diplomatic protocols going forward? Luna nodded. Good idea, Marcus. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sentient beings, the Human Confederation is establishing a new diplomatic position. I'm pleased to announce that I've been appointed as the first director of Interspecies Threat Assessment and Resolution. What exactly does that position entail? Asked High Counselor Zent, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Luna's smile was pure predator. Simple, Counselor. Identify species that pose a threat to human interests, and then I resolve those threats through whatever means prove most effective. Diplomacy when possible, creative problem-solving when necessary. She stood and gathered her materials, signaling that her participation in the session was concluded. Oh, and one more thing, she said, pausing at the chamber's exit. To any species currently harboring hostile intentions toward human space, I'd like to leave you with this thought. You've spent years studying us, learning our weaknesses, planning our destruction. But you made one critical error in your analysis. The chamber waited in tense silence. You studied us as prey. You learned how we react when we're afraid, when we're desperate, when we're dying. But you never bothered to study how humans behave when we're angry, when we're hunting, when we decided that something needs to die. Luna's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every being in the chamber heard her clearly. I let the first predator bite me so the rest of you would see what happens after. Now you know, humans don't just bite back. We swallow the threat whole and ask what's for dessert. She walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again mistake humanity for prey. The age of human diplomacy backed by overwhelming force had begun, and Captain Luna Vex was just getting started. Behind her, the various delegations began the complex process of rewriting every strategic assessment they'd ever made about human capabilities. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and she wore a Terran military uniform with a smile that promised creative solutions to anyone foolish enough to test her patience. The hunt was over. Humanity had won, and everyone else was about to learn what it meant to be prey to a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war.